and welcome to The Decision Makers, the show where we dig into what it takes to run a town. This week, I am here with Howard Buffi and Kevin Levandosky of the Water and Wastewater Department at the town of Neepawa. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
So the first thing we like to do here is get to know the people who are running our town a little better. So, tell me a little bit about yourselves and how you came to be in this work.
Okay. My name's Howard Buffi. About 29, 30 years ago, in a little town I was living not too far from here in Plumas, they had a well installed and the town actually got waterworks, and it slowly progressed that the fellow that was running it decided he was going to move, and I was willing to take the job, so we started there, and it's needless to say, I did not know that this would be something that would be turning into a full-time career, but yeah, so there's lots of experience treating water there, and eventually Neepawa called me and I ended up coming here, and the job just continued.
Bigger system, more stuff to take care of, and
yeah, a lot bigger system. Not a whole lot of difference in how you treat water. It's a little different technology, but you're still treating water, so it's yeah. Once you've got the concept, it's kind of all the same. But
so it's not, in this position, it's not so much as a situation where you trained for this from out of high school and then you went into it. You sort of came into the job and did training as you went.
Yeah, when I actually started, there wasn't, like, you didn't have to go for certifications to become water treatment operators. But that kind of got thrown on me after a couple of years I was doing it, and then all of a sudden the province decided, no, you have to actually be a certified operator. So luckily for me, all the ones I took then all applied to now. I just had to take a few more when I got here. I need a little higher levels.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was like probably 25, 26 years ago when I took a lot of my courses. So yeah.
So then it's just a matter of, as the technology changes, staying abreast of what's happening.
Yeah, it's the same as kind of like being a nurse or something like that, where you have to take education units, whether it's through courses or whatever you're taking to keep your education up in order to keep your certification. Because every 5 years that certification has to be renewed, and you need so many education units in order to qualify to be that level again. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Kevin?
Yeah, like I said, I'm Kevin Levandosky. I was born and raised in the town of Neepawa. Moved home from Winnipeg roughly about 4 years ago, and I started working with the town of Neepawa in the Parks Department. Howard convinced me to join his water treatment team over in town here, and I've been there since November 1st now. So I'm currently doing my levels as well. I've got my level 1s completed, and I've got to put some time in to get myself up to so I can write my level 2s and keep moving forward from there.
So was it sort of always your plan to work in this kind of technological field, or?
When I was hired on with the town, they approached me and asked if it was be something I was interested in doing, and it was. So when the time was right, they
really kind of fostered that career path for you.
Yeah, they just kind of suggested if I was open to it, and I was. So I kind of moved over this winter and haven't looked back, so going from there.
So are you responsible for your own certifications, or is that something that the department and the town takes care of for you?
Well, the town actually does pay for them, and they will, through the Manitoba Water and Wastewater Association, they put courses on and stuff like that, and you go for your levels through Red River College. You can do your courses there as well. But the town does pay for them. Pay for your expenses and that, because it does get, like, most of the courses that you go for are like a week long, so your hotel and your food and all that, it adds up a bit, right? So for an employee to cover that themselves, especially when they're starting, would be a little tough, right? So
exactly, and I think that town certainly wants to have that education experience in this kind of important work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something you don't want to do wrong.
Yeah, there are very bad consequences if this is done wrong. I realize that. So what is the scope of the department? What are you responsible for within the town, and how far out does it go?
Well, like the last interview we did, we mentioned that we're in Langford and Rosedale, and for our water, treated water division, through all the pipelines through town, and also High Life, which takes a large amount of our water. Our wastewater department, our particular department does not deal with the piping in town as far as the water or the wastewater. We only do the water meters, so we look after the water meter division as well. And then when it gets to the wastewater, we only look after the part that is the wastewater plant now, that used to be the lagoon cells.
Right.
So we look after the wastewater, and there's also qualifications you have to meet for that department to be certified for doing that. And sampling that has to be sent away to labs that make sure the water's safe enough to put into rivers and stuff, so we're not killing fish and stuff like that. And the government's came out with new qualifications, like on phosphorus for one is a big one. That's why a lot of the communities nowadays are basically forced into putting up a wastewater plant to get that level down, because that's where they're talking about the algae blooms and stuff like that in lakes and stuff. So they want to get those numbers down. So
yeah, has that ever been sort of an issue in the Neepawa area, or are we just kind of riding the wave of everyone has to do this now?
It just came when the legislation came out,
yeah.
and it's also because of the town expansion, the growth we're having. We were to the point that if we wouldn't have built the plant, we probably wouldn't have been able to put any more housing up. So
we're basically at capacity as far as our ability to.
For our old cells, we were, yeah.
So the wastewater, where we talked about this earlier, all about water going in, water going out. So the wastewater plant, that is relatively new.
Yep.
So sort of take me through that a little bit.
Okay. So our wastewater plant, that's a couple of years ago we actually started on it. It's it'll be about another year maybe before we're finally finished with that. It's been a challenge due to COVID and all kinds of financial issues and whatnot all. But it's so hopefully this next summer to winter, hopefully we get the rest of it done. So it is up and running, but we only have about half of the treatment working. The rest has to be built yet. We have it's going to be an MBBR, so it's a microbed bioreactor, which will be, it's like a big cement basin or a big swimming pool basically. Has a massive amount of air blowing through it. It has little, I guess for people to understand, it's a little like plastic chips floating around in it. And what happens is as the water passes past these chips, bacteria grows on them, and then the bacteria will eat some of the nutrients and just kind of creates its own little life cycle in there. So as those bacteria get older, then they shed themselves off to the bottom, and they will go through the rest of the plant, and then the new bacteria grows again. So it's a constant little life cycle growing there. So and that's to get rid of basically the ammonia. So we want to get the ammonia. So the first step of breaking that water down is taking ammonia in that form and changing it to nitrate and nitrite. And so far we're not regulated on the nitrogen level yet, but I'm sure that will come down the road.
Pipe? Okay.
But yeah, and then it goes from that microbed bioreactor, it'll go into the plant, and we add well, right now we're just adding elm, so we don't have the microbed bioreactor yet, but we do have the elm application. It's not done quite the way it should be yet because we're missing some stuff inside the plant, but it is being added, and we're going to add the elm and a polymer. So those two chemicals are going to be added eventually and mixed in with the water, and what we're trying to do is cause flocking of the particles in there. So basically all you're doing is clumping up of all the stuff that's in the water, so it comes into little lumps, and then we'll have a disc filter in there that will take all those little clumps and sort them out of the water, kind of like a filter or a screen would work.
Yeah. And
so that'll take that out, and then it'll go from that part, it'll continue on, and then it'll go through an ultraviolet light to kill all the bacteria that's in the water. And then from then it will eventually go into the river. But that's only about half of that is there and active. So
it sounds like it's a fairly state-of-the-art plant as far as the technology goes.
It's new technology.
Yeah. Now, is that the end that you're working on, or are you working more in the treatment plant side of it?
Right now I'm doing a little bit of both. Just getting myself caught up to speed on a little bit of the water treatment plant as well as the wastewater plant. So trying to learn a little bit of everything as we go. So
And I can imagine it's probably a lot to do.
at first it's a little overwhelming for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the more you do it, the more repetitious things get, and the more you become more familiarized with things. So
Yeah, because it's certainly, I mean, a high degree of responsibility, I would think, to be dealing with the water supply for the town.
yes, for sure.
And you want to sort of, I guess, you know,
Keep
these things like the back of your hand.
Keep everyone safe.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now the water that comes into the town, when you say High Life takes a lot of the water, is that the same water that's coming into the town? Do they have a different sort of pipeline going out there?
Yeah, it's all the same water. The entire town is all fed the same water. And I just want to say too that everybody, I've said this several times, all our drinking water in the town is safe to drink. All of the water. If at any time there's any instant that something is even slightly suspected that something's wrong, there will be a boil water advisory put out. People will be notified. We have a system that we can call, you can either send emails or phones or text to an entire street. You can do the entire town. You can pick which areas you want. So those people will be notified. So they don't have to worry about, oh, well, I didn't know this, you know, we couldn't drink it today. Well, no, you will be notified. So just to let everybody know, the water is safe to drink.
Yeah. And in situations where there is a boil water advisory, which I'm not sure we've had here, I don't recall.
Maybe through construction somewhere along the way, but
that is triggered by a very small risk, isn't it?
Yeah. The boil water advisory, if you ever have a line break, the government or drinking water officer will make us put a boil water advisory on. And the reason that is not because the water's necessarily bad, but it's out of the ordinary. It's became exposed to some different elements. So we're going to test it and check, and 99.999% of the time it's going to be good. But it's just a concern. We're going to check it. But we'll still put a boil water advisory on it so people are safe, just in case, right?
So when you hear this, it's basically a precautionary measure. It doesn't mean that someone has dumped a bunch of stuff directly into your pipeline that's going into your tap here.
it's just a potential risk hazard you're trying to eliminate, right? So
Yeah.
We've never actually had in town that we've had a boil water advisory and we sent the water away and it came back and it wasn't good. It's always came back good.
Yeah.
Ever since I've been here 13 years, we've never had a sample come back and they said, oh, well, don't drink, you know. It's always been good, but it's just a precaution.
Yeah. So what do you think that homeowners, residents in Neepawa should know about the water system, the water coming in, out of their homes?
Well, we've sent a lot of stuff out through billing and stuff like that, trying to let people know about a lot of stuff. There's two things we maybe want to highlight today. One thing that doesn't seem to be common knowledge, and I'm not sure why, when you put wastewater down your sink, or when you put it down your toilet, it goes to the same place. So if somebody has grease and I can't dump it down my sink, I'm going to go dump it down my toilet. No, it goes to the same place. Any practices of putting any amount of grease down any drain should never happen. Let it congeal, let it separate, take your grease or your oils or whatever, dispose of them. If it's a little bit of grease or whatever, you can put it in a napkin or paper towel or something, throw it in your garbage. Because if you ever seen grease as it solidifies, it gets hard. Well, the inside of our sewer lines eventually get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's a lot of money to clean them out. And what sometimes is worse than anything is all of a sudden some of that lets go and it piles up somewhere, and then that line plugs and then somebody's basement floods.
Right.
So we want to eliminate that problem, and I'd say 90% of the plugs we have in town is always just grease buildup.
Yeah.
So we've just got to change the practice of what we do with our waste water and stuff like that.
And this is something we see quite frequently in town, isn't it?
All the time.
Yeah.
They're actually working on one right now. There's also one other thing in conjunction with that is anyone who doesn't have a sewage backup valve in their house, my opinion, they're just waiting for the disaster to happen.
So for people who are, for instance, are renting a house, how do they know if this is something they have or that they should look at?
They can get a hold of their landlord or whatever, but and not only just put it in, you have to maintain it, right?
Yeah.
So all your backup valve does is if there is a plugged spot of sewer in the town, and let's say your sewer line at your house is lower than 15 people above you, and so the plug is past you, so all of their sewage can't get past that plug. It's all going to come into your house. So if you have this anti-backup valve, all that thing is going to do is close, and you may not be able to get rid of your water, so you stop flushing your toilet, stop running sinks, and when the town gets at it, they'll open that plug, and then all of a sudden everything will run again. So it's just kind of a stop instead of a backup disaster.
Prevention.
Yeah, because I know certainly people have had that happen as well.
Yeah, a lot of people have. It's such an unpleasant thing, especially if your basement's finished, and I mean, nobody wants your own, let alone everybody else's in your basement, you know, so it's always
and is it a fairly easy and straightforward thing to do, to install a backup valve?
Well, I know when I moved into town, like where we're living is actually pretty much on the top of our line, and I installed one right away.
Yeah.
I did hire the plumbers to do it. They usually knock a hole in your cement floor, cut your waste line open, put the valve in, and then cement it back around it. So the lid is exposed. You can always open the lid and do any maintenance or whatever you have, but it's just a spot in your floor. Well, mine is about probably 2 feet long and 1.5 feet wide, something like that. And we actually had one instance in our house that it did happen, but our valve just closed, and we waited a couple hours, and then all of a sudden everything was working again, which we could have had a major disaster, right? So.
Well, yeah, and I agree. That's definitely something that you everyone should be aware that this is something that they can take personal responsibility for when it comes to this.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is we've had a few people mention the smell of chlorine in their house from the water. And we've had some people mention that, oh, well, the bathroom tap doesn't smell so strong for chlorine, and the toilet doesn't smell strong for chlorine, but the kitchen sink does, or some scenario like that. So I think a lot of people don't understand the concept of what chlorine does and how it reacts. So you can have a strong chlorine smell because the chlorine is high, or you can have a strong chlorine smell which actually smells stronger than when the chlorine is high when it's reacting with something. So if you could, for just a picture analysis of this, if you picture a 2 liter of Coke and pretend that that is your water, and you have a Mentos in your hand, and that's your bacteria. You drop that in there, and all the foam coming out, that's your chlorine smell, which is actually an off-gassing of that reaction.
Right.
So that's, if you have any bacteria on a tap or whatever, that's the strong smell you're getting, is that reaction that's happening, and it's that gas that's coming off of that. So it's like any chemical reaction. You add two things together, you're going to get the poof of gas. And in this case, it smells like chlorine, and everybody goes, oh, the chlorine's way too high. No, the chlorine hasn't changed. Our chlorine varies from about 0.75 to 0.9.
Yeah. For
the last 13 years. That's where it's been. It hasn't gone anywhere. So it's not like, oh, when did this happen? It's never changed. So and especially if it's one tap in your house is good and one isn't, you know the issue's there, right?
It's the reaction. It's
so
some kind of contaminant is.
Yeah, so we just wanted to make that clear, and that we try to maintain our chlorine at a very stable level. And our water quality that's going out changes such a tiny bit, it's almost unmeasurable. So we're trying to keep our hardness about 120 milligrams, so that anybody still works on grains per gallon, that's about 9 grains per gallon. So it's the point that it's comfortable enough to work with, but it's not too hard that you need a whole pile of soap. And it's not the other route where it's so soft that, no, I can't get rid of this soap. It's just, everything's slippery, right? So that's why you head for that 9 grains. It's that comfortable level. It's
that happy medium.
Happy medium, yeah. So anyhow, I hope that helps some people that have trouble understanding that, but that's where we're at. So
yeah. Now, one of the other things that you'll see in a lot of homes is having their own water filter system. So you clearly have feelings about this. So what does this actually do, and is there value in it in a home that's on town water?
It depends on what kind of filter system. If it's just a straight particulate, like basically taking particles out of the water,
Yeah.
Somewhat helpful. But the thing is, anytime you put something in, you've got a fine line there, right? So if, let's say you're making a cake and you used all the right stuff, and then you set it on your counter and you cooked it a month later. Not so good, right? So the same thing with a filter, it's straining stuff out if there's anything in the water. But you got to realize that stuff builds up in there. So if the longer that sits, if there is one bacteria in there, and if that filter isn't changed very regular, then that one bacteria in a week will be millions of bacteria. So then all you've done is made a breeding ground for these things, right? So that's why it's very fussy how you do that. And that's on a straight filter. If you go to an iron filter or a water softener, all bets are off, because now you've totally altered the water. Once you've run it through a water softener, not only did you add salt to your water, but you also made your water aggressive. So it's going to actually eat away at your copper pipes. So if you have any lead solder in your pipes or anything like that, it's actually going to take that lead and put it into the water. Copper fittings will slowly get eroded, so you'll get little pinhole leaks and stuff will start leaking. So the whole part of running a water plant is to make the water good the way it goes out the door.
Right.
So once somebody's altered it, all bets are off. You don't.
So yeah, once it comes, if you're on town water, when it comes into your home, it is absolutely fine the way it is.
Yep.
Don't touch it. Just let it be.
Well,
Exactly.
if you have your own filter systems, you're
Yeah.
going to have your own maintenance schedule for your own home,
Right.
right? So
So there are other considerations there as well. I mean, I realize it's different if someone's on the farm, they have their own well. They're obviously
Yep.
going to have their own system in place. But yeah, no, I know of a lot of people who are on town water that still, either are going out and buying water or are filtering their water. And there's really no need for any of that.
No. And some people just buy water just because it smells so strong for chlorine. Like we do even ourselves. We have a glass jar, a
Yeah.
jug, and we run it in there, and we fill it up, and we set it in the fridge. Fill it maybe twice a day.
Yeah.
You give it 5-10 minutes, and that chlorine's off-gassed, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Some people don't like the taste of water. They like a straight bottled water because, I drink it and actually I don't taste anything. That's really good. Well, there's nothing in that water. It's
no
wet.
nutrients.
No
Yeah.
nutrients at all. So unless you're going to be down to the health food store and, now I need some magnesium, I need this, I need that, I need that, the water is a fairly good source of most of your minerals and stuff, eh? Well,
Yeah.
so you cut that out, and then the food nowadays, there's less nutrients in there, and your body needs something to grow and
Right.
stay healthy,
Yeah.
right? So,
I think that's one thing people don't think about is water is water is water. Well, not exactly.
yeah.
Not exactly. So there has been a lot of expansion both on the water plant and the wastewater plant. So what kind of expansion have we seen
Well,
in a general sense?
basically all our expansions are just because of the town growth.
Yeah.
Our water consumption has gone up in the since I've been here in 12 years, it's gone up a lot.
Yeah.
So we're still on that last episode we did there about the reservoir.
Yeah.
So we're still working on that. Thinking around the middle of June sometime, that should be done. It's been a little hard because of the cold weather, so that might slow us down a bit.
Winter construction is
yeah.
its own challenge.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
brutal this year. It's either had 4 feet of snow overnight or it was minus 40.
40.
Or both. I don't know.
Or 80K winds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they had a lot of challenges when they were doing that, but it's coming along quite well.
Yeah.
And our wastewater plant, that I believe is going to go to tender now. We got that delayed. I know last year we were going to tender it in fall, and that got delayed through COVID and whatnot also. So that's going to hopefully go out very shortly, and then hopefully we get that done by next spring and start cleaning up some of the projects. There's a lot going on in town.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it affects every system.
Yeah.
It affects everything you do in the town when they're doing that much new development.